weekly video breakdown. This is actually the last one that we're going to be doing in my contract breakdown series. So we started all the way back first weekend in January. We started with the Arizona Cardinals, and today we're going to be ending with the Washington football team. So 32 weeks. We did 32 teams. It's been a good stretch, but let's wrap it up and talk about the final team we haven't yet. So like I said, we're going to talk about the football team today. First, we'll start with free agents. So there are three notable free agents that I wanted to talk about today. As always, notable, it's kind of a subjective term, but it means that I deem that they're rosterable in Dynasty Owner. It actually came up this time for this article where one of them probably isn't rosterable anymore, but I'm including him because at one point he was, as early as last season, he would have been considered rosterable in Dynasty Owner. So we'll talk about him. The three players, though, for the football team are Lamar Miller, Kyle Allen, and Jeremy Sprinkle. So let's go through them one by one and talk about the differences. So Lamar Miller, he's up first. No surprise if anybody would call him a journeyman running back. He's played on 5 teams in 10 different seasons. So he's been around the block. He's been on quite a few teams, I think more than he would have liked to be, or really any back would like to be. But so his list of teams include Miami, Houston, New England, Chicago, Washington. Most notably for Miller, he missed the whole 2019 season due to an ACL tear. It was pretty devastating. And then he signed with the Patriots also in 2020, but he was only with them for, I think it was right about a week. Actually, it was a little bit more than a week, so right under a month. And he didn't play a snap for them in the regular season, so they ended up cutting him. Long story short, he ended up signing with the Washington football team right after free agency opened this year. But that was also short-lived because he has been cut. He was cut 8 days ago. So as we're reading this, listen to this right now. When this was released, he was released 8 days ago. So his contract was 1 year, $1.2 million. There's really not much to say. It's kind of a moot point. He might find another team to play on, but he's 30 years old. He hasn't seen a regular season rushing attempt since before his ACL tear in 2019. So it's just going to be a tough road for him to come back to a team, let alone get fantasy, relevance. So if he's owned, if you own him, I think it's probably about time to cut ties with him. I don't see a lot that he's going to do for you, at least this year. So up next, we have Kyle Allen. So he also had a tough 2020 season. He dislocated his left ankle. It was right about week 8, week 9. He was playing the Giants. So he actually put together a decent stretch because he took over for Dwayne Haskins. He actually put together a pretty decent stretch 2-3 games before he ended up getting hurt. He had back-to-back 20-plus fantasy points in the game before he got hurt. So not a terrible, couple game stretch he was putting together. But Allen, so he was an exclusive rights free agent coming into the 2021 season. Washington decided to offer him a tender. He accepted. We've talked about this before. He really didn't have much option. Your hands are kind of tied when you're an ER free FA. So he didn't really have many options. He signed it. The contract is 1 year, $850,000. But him coming back doesn't really mean he's going to be fantasy relevant. So we also know that Ryan Fitzpatrick was picked up by Washington in the offseason. So Fitzpatrick, he's a better, smarter, more seasoned quarterback. Little doubt in my mind that Fitzpatrick is going to be the starter for the majority of the games, if not all of them. I personally think it'd probably take an injury or, really a deep fall from what we're used to Fitzpatrick doing for him to not be the starter anymore. So we also add to that the fact that Taylor Heineke, he's in all likelihood going to be the backup to Fitz. So it's going to be third option for Allen if he even makes the team. I would say hold on to him. It's a cheap enough contract that you're able to roster him, but I wouldn't expect anything out of him, especially this year. But even looking forward, I don't really see a clear path to fantasy relevance for him. Like I said, keep rostering him. It would probably take a couple injuries for that quarterback committee before he would get some playing time, though. Final person I want to talk about, Jeremy Sprinkle. I just want to hit on him really quick. So he exits. He actually is leaving Washington. So he exits a crowded tight end committee in Washington, and he joins an even probably more crowded tight end committee in Dallas. So that's where he went to the Cowboys. He signed a 1 year, $1.12 million contract right around there with the Cowboys. So he's going to compete with both Blake Jarwin and Dalton Schultz for regular season playing time. That's going to be a tough go for him to see the field, to see meaningful reps, to see any amount of volume. Both Jarwin and Schultz are better tight ends. They've been on the team longer, obviously, than Sprinkle has. So it's going to be a tough road for fantasy relevance. And that's really the reason that I put that, header up at the beginning of this article was Sprinkle probably isn't going to need to be rostered anymore in Dynasty Owner. I hate to say it, he had a decent amount of optimism coming out of college, but it just hasn't been put together. And then he's joining a team that, I don't want to say they don't need a tight end, but they don't need a pass-catching tight end, that's for sure. Adding on to that, he's only had 26 receptions as a max in any season. So I doubt he's going to get to that even this year. 0% ownership in Dynasty Owner, so pretty much everyone agrees with me. I just want to mention him. You might think, well, why would you even talk about him if he's not even owned? He was a few years ago. He was last year. Figure I'd do him justice and at least mention him on here, the fact that people are able to drop him. And like I said, he was a little hopeful coming out of college, so it's disappointing, but that's the way it goes, I guess. So today I just want to talk about one player in the contract breakdown section, and that player is Antonio Gibson. So I know a lot of you love Antonio Gibson. I love Antonio Gibson. Let's talk about him a little bit. So he had a standout season 2020. He finished as RB13 in 2020. Very impressive, especially considering he didn't get very much volume, especially at the beginning of the season. And he actually missed 2 full games, and then he missed pretty much the other, the third game, the one where he got hurt. So he almost missed that entire game. So really he missed 3 games on the season, and he was still able to finish as RB13. He's projected to be an RB12 coming into the 2021 season. So time will tell what's going to happen there. But, I wanted to mention this. So his low volume, he actually had 5 games of 10 or less rushes. And that does not include the games where he was injured. So you take out those 3 games he was injured, excluding those, he still had 5 games of 10 or less rushes. So very impressive that he was able to do a lot with a little. There's almost no way that I don't see Gibson's volume increasing this season, aside from injury. So yeah, we know that J.D. McKissic's still there. He's going to garner touches, there's no doubt, especially receptions. But Gibson, clearly a better, more talented running back. He's younger. It's just going to be, I think, a very, very pleasant season for Gibson owners. The other thing I wanted to show you, let me pull it up on the screen here. So I want to show you some splits between, so these are the 5 most efficient running backs, Dynasty Dollar per fantasy point wise in Dynasty Owner, and this is projected for 2021. So just going to take a look at that real quick. I'll list them off here. There's people at home that aren't watching this. So most efficient projected, Myles Gaskin, then Chase Edmonds, David Montgomery, James Robinson, and 5th is Antonio Gibson. So these are taking into account salary combined with the 2021 projected fantasy points and giving you a 2021 projected Dynasty Dollar per fantasy point, essentially our value metric here at Dynasty Owner. So Gaskin 1, Edmonds, Montgomery, Robinson, Gibson. So what are we thinking after seeing these comparisons? So if you haven't guessed, like I already told you, they're projected to be all 5 of the most efficient running backs, and that's just because of their salary, their low salaries. We have a good inclination that none of these are going to be an RB, not an RB1. They're not going to be RB1. So some of these players will probably be an RB1, but they won't be the RB1. So if I had to tell you, what if I told you that one of these 5 is going to be the RB1 in the 2021 season? Who would you guess that it's going to be? And I'll give you my opinion here. I'll take this away so you can talk to me a little bit better here. So my opinion is that it really comes down to 2 players. I don't think that Gaskin, Edmonds, or James Robinson have the ability to be the RB1. I guess Montgomery, there's a chance. I think it's a very slim chance. But him and Antonio Gibson are the 2 that I would say have the only chance of these 5 to be RB1 on the season. And really what it comes down to is Montgomery, he's just catching up passes. So, if he had a big volume of receptions, targets, then I could see it. It's possible. Not likely, I wouldn't bet on it, but it's possible. But then you get to Antonio Gibson. So we're talking about Gibson. We're talking about projected top 5 value. And we're also talking about the ability to be a top 5 running back, especially with what we just talked about. That's starting to sound like a rock-solid league winner, at least at the running back position. And you got a cheap running back at that, so you can spend a little bit later on wide receiver. So even if you don't think that he's going to be a top 5 running back, that's fine. It might be a little bit of a stretch, maybe not. I don't know. He finished 13 with low volume last year. He's only going to get better. Assumingly he's going to get better in his sophomore season. But you have to admit that top 10 is at least going to be reasonable, a reasonable projection, 10 to 15. It also becomes clear when you compare Gibson's team dynamics with the other running backs on this list. So Edmonds and Robinson, they're on committees, we know that, and I'm not convinced that they're even the best running backs on their own team. So that's kind of a tough red flag situation right there already. We got Gaskin, who I do like Gaskin this year. He is the best running back on his team. I don't think maybe there's some debate to that, but personally, I think it's pretty clear that he's the best running back on his team. He should be the lead workhorse back. But the Dolphins have shown, especially coming off of injury, you got a running back that top dog, half the season. They go down to injury for a week or two. They come back. They're not necessarily the top guy again. So they're kind of riding the hot hand. At least they did last season. So we'll see what happens. But I don't know if he's going to be that trustworthy lead, like workhorse back for your roster. He will be for the Dolphins, I think, when he's healthy, but I just don't know if he'll be able to do that for your roster. Monty, like I said, he's the only other one that I could see being the RB1 in the season if we had to pick one. He will be the workhorse back. He's going to command the lion's share of the carries. He'll get the receptions. He's just not going to get as many as you would want. They have Tariq Cohen there. I'm not too concerned about him. It's just the fact that, historically, Montgomery hasn't always been the highest reception totaled running back. And that leads into Gibson. So Gibson, he isn't on the best team. We know that. Washington football team is not going to be the best team in the league. They might win their division, but they're not the best team in the league. He doesn't have the best offense. I don't think he's anywhere close to that. And he doesn't have the best offensive line. They're kind of middle of the pack as far as I would rank him. But he is the most talented and athletic running back on this list. I think that's pretty obvious. Montgomery would be the only one to be closest to him. He's going to receive the majority of the carries on his team. He is going to receive the majority of carries and probably running back receptions. So I don't know how McKissick's going to fit in there. I would expect Gibson to get quite a bit more this year than he did last year as they work him in sophomore season. So he's a player, obviously, I would love to own. I think, I'm kind of beating a dead horse here, but everyone would love to own Gibson in Dynasty Owner. It's reflected in his ADP. His ADP currently is 16.9. So that's overall. It's not round. So, he's going very early. He's going right at the beginning of the second round. So obviously you'd love to own him. My whole point here is that if things shape up and work out the way they're supposed to, at least they're projected to, he's going to be a league winner, and he's probably going to be the most valuable Dynasty dollar per fantasy point running back in the entire league in Dynasty Owner. That's the main point I wanted to put out there. Tried to end it on a bang here for our final of the 32 articles. So I appreciate everybody listening, reading. Go ahead and read my article if you haven't done that already. It pairs nicely with this video. It gives you a little bit more info than I've just given you now. So I appreciate everybody listening. Make sure, listen to all these other videos that Jay, Steve putting out. We've got some good stuff coming out. Go on to Dynasty Owner, check us out. Take a look at everything, look around. We still have a few more open drafts before the season starts. And just getting really excited, for the regular season to start. So I appreciate everybody listening.